how senior developers use mock framework, and how to mock classes like HttpClient and Dbontext. In this video, we are going to talk about all of them, then stay tuned. Hello everyone and welcome to this video. In this video, I'm going to talk about mocking techniques and how to mock an interface or some classes and how to use them in unit testing. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, please subscribe to my channel and hit the bell. And by hitting the bell, you will be notified when I upload a new video. Okay, let's get started with the code. Let's start by showing you the Swagger and the APIs. You can see we have two controllers. One product controllers, which just have a get method. Let's try it. I'm going to pass one ID and execute, and it returns a result. This is the get products. And after that, we have a student controller. We have get for getting all the students from the database. There is just one student here. We can add a new student. For example, if we try it, like student 2 and family 2. And let's execute it. It returns response code 200. It means it is done. And if I get all the students again, I can see I have two students here. Name 1, family 1, student 2, family 2. I'm not really creative with names and with naming things. Okay, let's go back to the code. Okay, let's start by taking a look at the controllers. Here we have a student controller. As you can see here, we have a method for getting all students, and it is calling get all async from student services. Here we are not injecting the student services class here. We are using dependency injection to just inject this student interface instance using the IOC container, and we are storing it in a variable of type iStudent services. It is really nice because when we are going to mock it, we are going to mock not a class, but an abstraction, an interface, and it makes our life really easy. Okay, let's create a project for testing this method and this controller and see how we can mock an interface. First of all, what I need is create a new project. I like to use XUnit. I'm going to call it a student API.test .NET 6. Okay, great. It has one unit test. I'm going to assert equal 1 and 1. I'm asserting 1 and 1. I want to test if my testing framework is working correctly or not. Let's check it and see. Fine, my testing framework is working. Now I need to create exactly the same folder that I have inside the student API. It is going to be called controllers. And after that, I'm going to create a file for the student controller test. This method should be public. Sorry, this class should be public because all the classes that we are going to ask our test framework to run the test inside that should be public. And I'm going to create a test here. I should decorate it with fact annotation. Great. Public void, and I should name it on. Let's go back to the controller. What is the name of the method? Get students async. On get students async, when success should return, for example, 3 dummy results. Or maybe just 3 results, not 3 dummy results. It is better. We have 3 parts in our testing. The first one is arrange, then act, and then assert. Let's start with the arrange. We are going to test this method. For testing this method, we need to instantiate a student controller first. For doing so, I need to add this project as a dependency to the test project. Nice. And I need to instantiate it. Var controller equal new student controller. And as you can see, I need to pass an instance, an object of the iStudent service. How can I do that? Using mock frameworks. Let me open my NuGet package manager. I'm searching for mock, MOQ. And let's find the latest stable version which can be run with .NET 6. This one is the version that we want. Okay, installation completed. We have an error here. We know it because it expects us to provide it with one instance of iStudent service. I'm going to create a mock object var student service mock equal new mock iStudent service. Great. It doesn't recognize the mock. Let me add it. And this mock should be with capital M. Great. Now what I'm going to pass is the student service mock.object. I haven't checked what is happening behind the scene in the mock frameworks, but based on its behavior, I believe that it is creating a proxy behind the scene. And this object is the proxy around the definition that we have inside this interface. Mocking frameworks allow us to set up methods, but just remember, it is really important. You can set up just the methods which are virtual or overridden. If the method is implemented, you are not allowed to override it. You cannot set the method up. Okay, what do I mean by set up the method? Let's go back to the controller itself. Here my method is calling another method from the student service, but it is against the rules and definition that we have about unit testing. In unit testing, we are going to test a unit of code independently, but it is dependent to the method that we have in another service. We need to cut this dependency. Mock enters here and helps us to break this dependency. How? By telling it that when there is a call for a method, for example, of iStudent service, do not run it. And we are providing the test framework with the result that we want to be placed in the place that we are going to call the method. Okay, I guess I didn't explain it really well. Let me write it down and show you what I mean. Here we have student service mock. I'm going to set up a method. The method that I want to set up is let me check it, get all async. Let's go back here. I'm going to mock get all async, and it should returns, because this method is async, it should returns async. I'm going to use returns async. And what it is going to return? It is returning task, a list of students. I can create a list of students here. I guess I have a list of students somewhere because I prepared it not to write it down here. Great. It is the list of students that I prepared before I started recording. Sansa Stark, Arya Stark, and Robb Stark. Okay, Robb Stark and Arya Stark. Now we arranged everything. It is time to act. For acting, it means that I need to run the method that I want to test. And it is from controller. It is from controller dot get students async. Var response equal. And because this one is async, I need to await this call. I need to await this call and change this one to async task to work. Great. Let's go back here and see what we are returning. We are returning OK object result. Then I really like to cast this one to OK object result. What should I cast? The result to the OK object result. And then var response result is equal to response dot response dot value, I guess. Yes. And then here I'm going to check if it is returning 3 results or not. Then assert dot equal. What is the expected value? It is 3. And what is the actual one? It is the response result. Response result. Let me scroll a bit down. That count. Let me check. The response result is a type of object, then I need to cast it. I need to cast it to list of students. List of students. Yes. Now I can use count here. Let's try to run the test and see what will happen. Fine, it is working. Now it is time to refactor. After having a red unit test, we are going to implement it in TDD, but because we are not following TDD here, we don't have red state. But in TDD, we have red, green refactor. It is correct that we don't have red state here, but we have green. Now it is time to refactoring. How to refactor? Let me take a look at my method. I really don't like this part. It is making my code a bit messy. What I usually do is to create a fixture folder and create a class like data fixture and put everything inside the data fixture. It should be the class. Let me cut this one and I'm going to call it data fixture get all students. Generate the method for me, please. Yes. And return it. Now it is a bit better. Let me run the test again. Nice. It is still working. Let's write another test. And it is for checking if calling getStudentsAsync is the controller, is the result of the call is 200 or not. Okay, fact. It should be fact, and it should be public sync task, and the name is, let me copy here, should return result using status 200. And let's copy everything here. I'm copying for the sake of time. Usually when you are writing unit tests, you shouldn't copy and paste. I need to mock everything, and here I don't need the response result. I just need to check if the actual result for the response dot status code is 200. Let's check it. Really nice. My unit tests are green. Now it is time to refactoring. Let me see. I can see this part is repetitive between all the test cases. Then I'm putting it inside the constructor. Great. Just move it here. And I need controller. Then I'm going to create a read-only field for controller. Fine. And remove this part as well. When you are using XUnit for testing your application, XUnit guarantees that the constructor will run before each method's execution. The way that XUnit runs each of the methods is that create an instance of the class, run the constructor, run the test method, and dispose it. And for the next method, it is going to create another instance of this test class, run the constructor, and run this one. It means that there is no pollution between the shared data that you have here. Okay, fine. I had a refactor and I need to run the tests again. Fine. Let me close everything and go back here to the solution. We mocked an interface. It is the easiest part of our job as a developer to test an interface. But what we can do if we have a class that we are injecting a concrete class to it? Let me see. For example, here in the services, I have a student services, and a student services accepts iRepository. Okay, fine, but I don't want to test this one. It is exactly the same. Let me go to repositories. I have a repository. Here in the repository, we are injecting Dbontext. Dbontext is a class. It is not an interface. How to mock this one? Let's start by testing it. I'm going to create a folder here, and I'm going to call it repositories. My class name is repository test. Great, it should be public. And I want to test, for example, this one, get all async. I want to see when I call it, if it is successful, it should return 3 results. Exactly the same thing that we had. Public void on calling, what was the method name? Get all async. When success should return 3 results. Fine. And we have arrange, we have act, and we have assert. In the arrange part, I need to create an instance of iRepository class. Great. Var repo equal new repository of type student. But I need to pass a dbcontext here. How can I do that? Let's check. I'm going to use mock framework again. dbcontext mock equal new mock. dbcontext var with a small v. And now I'm going to inject this one dot objects. What can I set up here? What method should I set up? If I come back here, I will see that I'm using the entity. And what is entity? This underscore entity is what we create here based on the dbcontext.set. We are passing the type, for example, here a student, to the dbcontext, and dbcontext returned a student as an entity. A student db set as an entity, and here it is just reading the student db set. Okay, nice and clear. Then let's see how can I do that. dbcontext mock dot setup what? T dot set student. Great. And it should return something. What it should return? It should return a db set of students. How can I do that? We have data fixture dot get all students. It is returning the students, but it is a list. And what set expect us to return db set? We need to install another NuGet package for mock EntityFramework. By installing mock EntityFramework and accept it, we will see that we have another return here. Come on. We have return dbset. And now it should work. We are telling it that we are going to return a dbset and we are going to pass you a list. And when this dbset is called, please return this value for me. And inside the act, I'm just going to var result equal await repo dot get all sync. Let me check if it is the correct one. Yes, it is exactly what I want. And here it should be task. Okay, now we have no more errors. And here I'm going to set cert dot equal tree and result dot count. Let's run the tests. And we will see that they are all passing. Let's check one thing about set. If I go back to the repository, and here I set up set. I told you that we cannot set up everything. We should set up the methods or the elements of the class which are virtual or overridden. Let's check what is happening for set. Set is virtual, and it is the reason that we can override it. inside our mock framework and set it up. Okay, let's go back to the code and see what else do we have. We have another repository. This repository, we are not using this repository, but I just created this one as an example because sometimes you don't have a generic repository and you have one student repository, maybe for BDD development or maybe for some design reasons, you have some specific repositories for an entity. And here we are using context, which is the student context, that student, the entity itself. We are not using the set. Let's check student. And as you can see, it is virtual. Good for us. It means that we can start mocking it. Let's open this one. Under the repositories, student repository test. It should be public. And let me borrow some codes from the previous test that I had. Here I am going to call repository, not generic repository of a string, student repository. Okay, great. And what I'm going to mock here and set up here, t.students. Let me see, t.student. Come on, why it is not working? Okay, the issue here is that I am mocking something from Dbontext, but it should be from student Dbontext. It is one of the reasons that we are not using Ctrl+C and Ctrl+V, because you eventually forget to change everything. And yes, and now we have students, and it should return dataset. Let me import this one and 3 results. Let me run the test and see what will happen. I forget the fact here. It is the reason that we don't have it here. Silly me, I guess. We didn't decorate this one with fact and we just saw that everything is green. Oh, bad mistake. Now I can see that I have this repository here as well. It was a really bad mistake, but when you are coding and recording, sometimes it happens. I have the issue here. What is the issue here? It says that, let me read it. Okay, I guess the issue here is because we are passing the mock object to the repository before set up the method. Let's check. Yeah, mock documentation said that you should do it before passing it. Yeah, it is correct, my mistake. And it is working in some other places. I'm not sure why it is like that. Let me change it and see. Yeah, it is still working. There is one more Nugget package that I really like to use when I'm testing something, and it is Fuent Assertion. Fuent Assertion, please. Yes, and let's see if it supports. Yes. .NET 6. It is installed. Fuent Assertion will help us to write the asserts in more natural way. For example, here I can say result.count that should be three. not 33, 3. And I guess it is more readable and I really like it and I usually use it. Let's check it. And it has one more important extension method. For example, here I'm going to repeat this one, and on calling get all async when success should return the expected result. What does it mean? It means that I'm going to say that result dot should be equivalent to data fixture dot get all students. Be equivalent to is going to check if the object that I'm passing is exactly the same and equal to the object that we are checking or not. It is a nice thing because otherwise you need to create one comparer and use the comparer for compare your objects. Okay, before running it, let me check what is the issue here. Okay, it is a method, and let's run it and check it. Nice. But our life is not always that simple and easy. We have some other classes that when we want to mock them, it is really hard to find a virtual or overridden method them. For example, HTTP client. HTTP client is really hard class to mock. Why? Let's see. First, close everything, go back to the Solution Explorer. Let me go to the services, and for product services, I can see that in the product services, I'm passing HTTP client and I option from the type product options with the call config. If I go back to the program.cs, you can see that I am reading this section of my configuration file and I'm injecting it as a configuration with the type product options. And if I come here, you will see that product options, it has two pairs of values here, endpoint and max ID. Endpoint point to the site that we are reading the products from. dummyjson.com is the site that I'm using here. You can check it. It is nice if you want to test something and you don't have a real endpoint. For example, here I'm just going to get something, a JSON result from somewhere, and show you here. dummyjson.com is a good website that you can always use. Okay, great. Let me go back to the product services. In the product services, if I want to instantiate this one, I need to pass HTTP client and product configuration to the constructor. Let's see how it works. First of all, I need to create services folder here, and after that the method which is product service test. Let's open this one as well. The product service, it should be public. We should have a method public void on what is the method name, get product async. When success should return one dummy product. Great. And let's do not forget to decorate our method with fact attribute. We have three parts: arrange, act, and assert. We are going to create a service and new it from product service. What I want here, first of all, I need HTTP client. Let's create it for it. Var HTTP client equal new HTTP client. Great. And let's pass it here. And then we need to have a config equal, I guess it should be something like that. Options.create or something, I guess. New product options. Yes. It is better to have it here and have the object initializer one level down. And it has endpoint. I'm going to create HTTP test endpoint.com. I'm not sure if it does exist or not, and I don't care. And max ID is equal 15. And let's pass it here as well. Config. Great. But we have some issues. We need to mock something because we want to set up a method, but we don't have it yet. Let's write the act first. In the act, we are going to call this method service.getProductAsync. We need to pass an ID. For example, here we are passing 1, and then var response equal, I need to await it, and when I'm awaiting it, it should be async task. Nice. And what it returns is a product. We are going to check if response dot should be equivalent to data fixture dot get dummy product. We still don't have it, but let's create it. I wrote it for the sake of time. Great. Now we have it. Let's run it and see what will happen without mocking anything. We should see an error here. Nice. And the message is system.net HTTPClient. There is no such host name because it really wants to send something to this endpoint. It means that my method here has a dependency and the dependency is not cut yet. Let's check how can we cut it. Let's go inside the HTTP client. I can see HTTP client here. And we are using send async. We can see it has 3 constructors. And in the product service, we are using getAsync. Let's check getAsync. Okay, we are using getAsync, not send async. They are calling each other one by one. This one is calling this one, after that the other one, and finally they are going to call send async. Let me find it. Send async. And send async will find another send async. You can see this one is virtual, but it is really hard to mock it We have another send async here that we are calling this one. And here we are checking the request for send. We are creating a tuple because we need to prepare the cancellation token, and then return core. And core is a method, a nested method that we created here. I know it is a bit complicated. I'm just explaining how we can find in a complex object that what should we mock. Here inside the core method, I can see we are using await base.async, and we are passing the request, which is HTTP request message, CTC, which is cancellation token, .token. And let me press F12 here. We have HTTP request message, and here we are sending async with the telemetry, and we do have a handler. What is this handler? Let me go to definition. It is the HTTP message handler. Let me check it here. Then HTTP message handler is the object which is responsible for sending something through the HTTP protocol and get the result. And HTTP message handler can be passed to the HTTP client via construction. Okay, it is a bit complicated, but worth to try. Let me see. Here, I'm going to create var HTTP message handler mock is equal new mock HTTP message handler. Nice. And I'm going to pass it to HTTP client. Great. And here inside the HTTP message handler, it is an abstract class. Abstract class is exactly like interface. I can mock everything here. Good for me. And we have an abstract task which returns abstract method which returns task HTTP response message send async. I want to mock this one. Let me go back to the product service.test. I need to mock it. Then HTTP message handler mock.setup. What I'm going to set up here. Oh, it is not possible. I cannot find the send async here. Why? Because send async is protected. We cannot mock protected members of a class with the classic way. I need to use .protected and then setup. Okay, let's see. Setup. What should I pass? It says that first give me the name of the method in a string. Okay, weird. Name of the method in a string, and after that the parameter that it has. Let me see what parameter it has. The first one is HTTP request message. I don't know what is the HTTP request message object that I am going to pass. So I need to use it expression that is any, and we are telling it if there is any object of type HTTP request message and it is passed to the send async, return the value we want. But it is not the only parameter that we have. We have a cancellation token as well. We need to do exactly the same thing. It expression dot is any, and then dot return. Let me check. dot return. Why it is not working? Setup is iSetup. Okay, let me see. Maybe I need to change it to the generic method, and we should say what is the return value of the send async. This is the return value for the send async. Fine. And now let's see. Okay, we have return async. Great. What we are going to return, data fixture dot get dummy product. Fine. But it is throwing an error. Why? Because I am returning an object. It shouldn't be an object. It should be a product. Okay. It is not better. We are returning a product, but it expects us to return a task HTTP response. Okay, let's create a new HTTP response where HTTP response equal new HTTP response message. Let me see, what do we have here? We can pass it the response code. Okay, what is the response code? For example, response code okay. And I want to have a content inside this response message, and the content should be this dummy product that I have. Let me see, what do I have here? I can set content, header, response phrase. Content is what I want, but I need to convert it to JSON. How to do that? JSON converter dot JSON convert dot serialize object. And what is the object that I want to serialize? Data fixture. It is a string, and it is a type of HTTP. Then I need to change it to new string content. New string content, I guess. Yes, we have it. And I guess it is fine. Let's return it. One parenthesis, second parenthesis, we need a third parenthesis here as well. Okay, we create one HTTP message handler, a mock object of that, and we are going to set up send async. We are telling it we don't care what parameters you are getting, you should return the response that I created for you. And the response is like that. The response is an HTTP response with the content that we provided. We are serializing a dummy product and passing it to it. Let's check it, let's run it and see what will happen. Well, it is working. Nice. And let's see if we have anything to refactor here. I guess not. It is really important to check, for example, especially when you're using HTTP client, because sending something via network is really time consuming. It is nice to check that you are calling it just once. We can do it, but it is out of the title of the content that I provided for this session and this video. Do not forget to like this video if you like it. If you have any comments or questions, please ask me in the comment section below and let me know what do you think about mocking and what questions do you have. It is all the content that I wanted to provide you with today. Thank you all for watching this video and do not forget to like and subscribe.